Not only do my kids serve as a permanent reminder of what's important, they also keep me humble. So my kids keep me humble. Unfortunately, Kamala Harris doesn't have anything keeping her humble.
That was former Trump press secretary and current Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders taking what sounds like a pretty clear swipe at Kamala Harris for not having biological children, thereby reigniting childless cat lady and all the discourse surrounding that. It also prompted a sharp rebuke from the mother of Harris's two stepkids, Kirsten Emhoff, who wrote, "Cole and Ella, the stepkids, keep us inspired to make the world a better place. I do it through storytelling. Kamala Harris has spent her entire career working for the people, all families. That keeps you pretty humble." Joining us now, Washington Post senior national political correspondent and MSNBC political analyst Ashley Parker, and writer-at-large for New York Magazine and author of All the Single Ladies, Unmarried Women, and the Rise of an Independent Nation, Rebecca Traister. Ashley, I mean, it says something when the ex-wife comes to your defense and says, no, she's a great mom, and Cole and Emma, her stepkids, keep her grounded. Why does the Trump team keep going back here? Why do they keep mining the childless cat lady insult?
Well, there's clearly a culture within the organization that starts at the top that they somehow have a dismissive, at least from these public statements, a fairly dismissive attitude towards women who choose not to have children. But just on the blended family front, this is not the first time that Kirsten Emhoff, the ex-wife of Kamala's husband, has come to her defense. And again, Katie, as you and I know, who were part of blended families or stepmothers, blended families are incredibly complicated, and it is the toughest endorsement to get is that of your current partner's ex-wife. And that is something that resonates with millions of Americans. And when she speaks out like that, as she did yesterday in defense of the vice president, as she has previously, I hear from voters, from people who are step-parents, from people who had step-parents, from people who are in situations that are not conventional nuclear families from the 1950s, to say sort of how meaningful that sort of message is, and that it reflects so positively on the vice president, her husband, and her husband's ex-wife. And my final point, and again, a point of personal privilege here as a step-parent, is stepkids also keep you humble.
Yes, they do. I can tell you that. They did the second they became not even my stepkids, but, you know, when I was dating my husband and they were little, they immediately humble you. Rebecca, I won't go into detail. Rebecca, this is now a part of the Republican Party, which is to say that if you don't have kids, you're not as worthy. You're not as good. There's something wrong with you. There's something bad about you. You can't possibly have the future or the country's interests in mind if you don't have children.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that this is, first of all, it's alienating, as you and Ashley are pointing out. It's alienating to millions of people who have all kinds of family shapes out there, and who know all kinds of familial dynamics. But it is also tied to Republican policy priorities that we have seen building over years and in advance of this presidential ticket. Certainly, the overturn of Roe with the Dobbs decision that made it harder for people in need of reproductive health care to get that health care, to get abortion care that they needed. In Clarence Thomas's concurrence with the Dobbs decision, he cited Griswold, which gave the married people the right to contraception, as a case that the court might want to re-examine. He also cited Obergefell, the marriage equality case, as something that the court should revisit and perhaps decide differently. All of this, you see in states across the country, Republicans aiming for no-fault divorce laws, making it harder for couples to get divorces that they want to get, or that one member of them might want to get. altogether, these Republican policy priorities and issues are about reinstating certain gendered norms around power, domesticity, the role of women as inherently maternal. This is a party that is increasingly showing us, not only through words like this, but through their policy choices, that they want to see more Americans early, hetero, married, having children. And in part, it's also really, and J.D. Vance has made this very clear, about pushing women who may be delaying childbearing or not having children or having children in different familial configurations out of workplaces. You know, when Dobbs was decided, J.D. Vance tweeted, if your worldview tells you that it's bad for women to become mothers, but liberating for them to work 90 hours a week in a cubicle at the New York Times or Goldman Sachs, you've been had, making it very clear that he connects women's ability to control their own reproduction to their success and perhaps competition within high-powered professions like the media and in finance. These are the kinds of things we're looking at, is the Republican Party's desire to reinstate an early married hetero norm in which women are primarily valued as mothers and not necessarily as equals or professionals in the rest of the world.
Allow me to take a slightly more moderate stance on this, or no, just to put this question out there. Is this rhetoric, is it susceptible, or is it encouraging or more palatable, that's what I was looking for, to voters out there who might not believe that women should be in the home and that all women should have children, who might think that women should have careers, and who might, you know, not believe in this idea that you can't have an abortion, period, but who might say the world is changing. And it's changing fast. And I don't recognize it any longer. I'm a little uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable with this idea that we're changing pronouns. I'm uncomfortable with the idea that, like, more people are deciding to have kids without having a partner, period, just going out there on their own. The world doesn't look the same as it did to me any longer. Also, I don't like the idea that everybody has to work. I want to go back to a time where families could be more centered and there could be more time spent at home and not at the office. Are voters who are feeling that sort of angst, maybe not the extreme side of it, but just the moderate side, more moderate side of it, is this a palatable message to those voters to potentially, I mean, do they think that, Rebecca, they're targeting suburban women, like Beltline women in Philadelphia?
They may think that they are targeting those women. And I'm sure that, of course, if there weren't people who were susceptible to those kinds of impulses, then the Republican Party wouldn't have its a lot of its traditional base. But what is also true is that lots of people who are discomfited by changing power dynamics in the world also have blended families, or themselves may not have had children for any number of reasons, or have a relative or daughter who hasn't had a child. I think, you know, I'm not somebody who can predict how these messages are going to go over, but I think they really are running the risk of alienating all kinds of people who might be ideologically aligned with them, but who are personally insulted and attacked by this notion that you're somehow worth less if you haven't had biological children.
Yeah. All right, Rebecca Traister, thank you very much. Ashley Parker, I will say that Did I Do a Good Wipe was the first time I felt very humbled by having stepchildren. Ashley, they're going to be mortified that I said that on television. Ashley Parker, Rebecca Traister, ladies, thank you so much for joining me on this.